The following announcement has been paid for by the New World Order.
When we last left off, we saw that what I thought at the time was Razor Ramon, but is actually Scott Hall returning to WCW, made his return to Nitro. And he confronted Eric Bischoff, promising that they were going to go to war. The following week, he confronted Sting, and Sting wanted to wrestle him right there one-on-one. But then Scott Hall told not only Sting, but Bischoff that next week, he's going to have a surprise. But no, a big surprise. So here we are, July 10th, 2026, 30 years later. We are going to gab about that night when Scott Hall introduced his big surprise to the WCW, and the world changed as we know it. The big surprise was Diesel? Well, I thought it was Diesel, but it was really Kevin Nash making his return. So that's what we're going to gab about today on episode 25, Scott Hall's Big Surprise. Hey, Kevin Nash, do you have a word to describe this episode?
Look at the adjective, play.
And with that, welcome back, everybody, to episode 25, or welcome to episode 25, and back to Oofman Entertainment Presents Gabbin with Oof. We are now in part 2 of this little mini documentary series on the nWo's 30th anniversary. I am joined by the chef man himself, Dave Scheffler. Dave, how are you doing, my brother? We'll go this way, because it's only really just you and I. We're two-man power trip today, Dave. How you doing, brother?
We're two-man trip. I'm doing good, Oofman. There's going to be the second part is a good one. It'll lead into the third and final part of it when we get to it. But we're going to have a good talk here.
Exactly. So, as you saw in the intro video, we did a little recap on there. So we have hit now, the date is 30 years ago today, June 10th, on the episode of Nitro. From the 2 weeks ago when we saw Hall, well, I thought it was Diesel. We thought it was Razor Ramon. And then last week on Nitro, he didn't come out till the end. So now here was his big surprise. And again, I was a lowercase oof back then. And when he said he had a big surprise, he confronted Eric Bischoff towards the end, did Scott Hall. He's pointing to the back. And I'm like, holy crap, it's Diesel. Or was it? I don't know. But it looked like Diesel, but he was talking like him. He had a cap on, but it looked like Diesel. So, Dave, let's reminisce. So you saw what, again, probably you were thinking like me. You saw what you thought was Diesel showing up on Nitro. So what was your reaction when you saw what we thought as Diesel now in WCW?
Well, it was exactly as Scott said. It was a big surprise. And you had Bischoff yelling at him, all right, where's your other guys? Where's your other guys? And
yep,
Scott's funny. He's got this comedy pointing behind you, and he keeps saying, where? And then all of a sudden you see our buddy Diesel, or as we found out to be Kevin Nash, just not hitting Bischoff on the back. And when he turned, it's like, oh my God, who is this? What is going on here? It was hilarious. I started laughing because Scott Hall was always so funny, and the way he brought things out. He had the best delivery of one of the best deliveries of any of the wrestlers I had ever seen, and he just played it perfectly.
Yeah, and that's one thing that was so good about Hall. We'll get into his later life later on, but just at the beginnings right here of just showing up on Nitro and all that, he played it well. They walked the line perfectly. I mean, well, we all know in WWF at the time, he was Razor Ramon. He had the accent. And I think this is where, as we later on, we found out that the WWF sued them for gimmick infringement because, according to Vince in the Rise and Fall of WCW, he said that they were basically acting like Razor Ramon, acting like Diesel with a wink, wink, nudge, nudge. We are or we aren't. Mm-hmm. So his accent was like kind of fading here and there, especially here now in the third time he appeared. But again, I was 14 years old during this time watching the Monday Night War. And like I said in part one of this series, I was buying it hook, line, and sinker. I was sitting there going like, I am believing that Vince McMahon had sent these two guys to WCW because it just worked so well. Had Scott not been doing the accent, maybe I'd be like, all right, this is something new that they're different. But he walked the line with the accent. He had the toothpick. He didn't start using "Hey Yo" yet. That came later on. But then when, again, what we thought was Diesel, I'm like, all right, the needle started moving towards watching WCW a little bit more because it was working. We were at a point where Raw was doing good in 96 and Nitro so far so good as well. But this was, I think, a turning point in not only the Monday Night Wars, but in professional wrestling, at least here in North America, where you had two guys, again, synonymous with WWF. Again, like we mentioned before, Lex Luger showed up. The first shot at the first Nitro was big. Medusa throwing the women's title, the WWF women's title in the garbage was very huge as well. But I think even though as impactful that those two events were, and I think even more Lex showing up on that very first Nitro to set the bar, I guess, as to what would happen on Nitro, Hall and Nash literally coming from literally off of WWF TV straight into this invasion and all that, they bought it. So I'm trying to remember how it was. Again, it's hard to remember 30 years ago, but how captivating it was. And we mentioned it before, and shout out to Aaron and the boys at No DQ and everybody else. We've mentioned it before. The state of wrestling today in 2026, it's amazing in 30 years how it's changed. And I miss that kind of stuff. Now, I'm not saying, and again, I hope not, whether they stay with Warner Brothers or not. AEW, stay on Wednesday nights. You're doing great. Focus on yourself. But I miss those days of when both companies would have you gripping, like you're back when our remotes, and like couldn't wait for the next show. Like I said, that was towards the end of Nitro. We had Razor and Diesel in WCW. I could not wait for the following Nitro. Like, what's going to happen there? And then you start going, wait, who's going to jump next? Like, who's the third man, or who's going to be the next incarnation of the membership of whatever the heck's going on? And as we travel to July, we're the big one. But that's what I miss in wrestling today. The whole watching, whether Raw, even Dynamite, SmackDown, or whatever, just watching it and going like, man, I can't wait till next week. I'm not feeling that, but I'm going to ask you, Dave, what is it that wrestling is missing today that, again, in 30 years, it's gone from, it was must-see TV. I mean, the must-see TV got later on after July, obviously, but this was, I think, the beginning of must-see TV with both companies, not just one or the other.
Right.
But what is it that today in 2026 wrestling is missing, or what can they do? Is it creative? Is it the fact that two companies are on different nights? What do you think it is?
I think it's creative, but I think the main thing, and I mentioned it, being a little bit older than most of the guys that we're on No DQ with and talk about wrestling back in the day, especially me. But I think the social media has hurt it because you can't hide things like you could back then. And I think if the social media wasn't the way it was, I think AEW might be able to do what WCW did, but the way it is nowadays, it's like you can't not keep a secret anywhere, and
that's true.
Unfortunately, that's not going to ever change because we're only going to be getting more technology driven as we go.
That's true,
and that's why I think we mentioned I think we mentioned it with me, you, and C-Rod on the last episode. It's hard to go back in time at this point because I don't think I don't think AEW can ever do what WCW did. Like you said, they have to be their own animal at this point. They have to do what they think is. They don't need to be looking at WWE and what they do and try to mirror anything. I think they just have to have a life of their own, and the creative. And it might sound silly. I don't want him to ever wrestle again, but if Mick Foley, if they put him in charge of other creative stuff, I think that could really help him. I think he's other than being dumb about maybe wrestling again, but he's a smart guy. He's been around for over 30 years. He knows the business. He's seen good and bad, and I think he could be a help to them. I think he was the secondary choice to AEW. I think they really wanted Shane McMahon. I think it turned out like in a baseball term, he was the second choice to get as a free agent for AEW. But to get back to your question, I think it's creative and it's the technology, but most of all, it's just not the same business anymore. It's things have changed. Some of them good, some of them bad.
Yeah.
And we don't see you don't see the mirror of superstars like in the Attitude Era and when WCW, the Monday Night War started. You don't see a bunch of great main eventers. We don't have that
That's
many
true.
great. That's why Cody Rhodes can't be turned heel because we don't have any great faces behind him. There's just not enough. We have a lot more superstars and wrestlers on each wrestling organization, but we don't have enough main eventers.
Right.
It's a lot of mid-carders, really, if you think about it.
And I'm going to do a cheap, shameless plug to our buddy Papagino. In our last episode, we spoke about that. So to jump on Gino's back a little bit here, do you think what we spoke about last week? So guys, check that out. I'll put the link in the description of humbling the superstars or the new stars, like you're saying. Yes, imagine if they did push the new stars like they did in WCW or WWF back in the day, or even we'll creep into the Attitude Era a little bit, where we had Austin, we had Rock, we had DX. Like the company was on fire, and WCW had the nWo, they had Goldberg, they had the Horsemen. That is the question I would like answered. Why? And not necessarily it's an AEW thing, because I agreed what you said last time, that it seems like when it comes to building future stars, AEW is a little bit advanced more than WWE is. We got Kyle Fletcher as one of them. We got one day maybe two belt night guy. We have all these other new fresh stars. We got Okada and Takeshita. They're relatively not young, but they are new faces in America, at least, where new fans. I discovered them through AEW. So that's the thing. Do you think if WWE, let's focus on WWE a little bit because they won the war supposedly. So if WWE pushed these new young stars, like we said with in Gino's video and other topics as well with No DQ, if they pushed all these new stars, do you think that would? I'm kind of tying my original question, so it's a two-part. It's a combination here where if WWE focused their attention on the new stars and gave them a real legit push, do you think their programming would become almost must-see like it was 30 years ago, or do you think there's still too much wrestling today? The question is, what is it?
And the weird thing is, this past Monday on Raw, they showed that they pushed another youngster with Javon Evans, which was
There's
surprising.
Another one there, yeah.
Now the thing is, Javon's great, but I don't think they look at him as a world title holder. I think he's more mid card, only because of his size, maybe. But I mean, I still think there's not enough. I think there's, and I think our friend Aaron, who runs No DQ, another plug, mentioned it the best. I think there's too much wrestling. He did it in one of his new shorts. There's too much. And if this wasn't his job, he'd be happy watching the highlights and watching the pay-per-views and picking and choosing, because there's just too much out there now. And it's hard to watch all of it. I don't know how our buddy, also another cheap plug, Noah, does it. Noah Foster, who's been on with us before on Gino's show. Yeah. But I mean, I don't know how he watches as much as he does, to be honest, because as much as I love wrestling, I think I get to a point too, at one point or another, that I'm happy watching a review after the show.
Right.
Unless I know that there's something really must see on there, because there's not as many. That's the other thing. There's no the cliffhangers, like you said. How many times have we seen shows wanting us more?
That's the thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I think though, and it's mentioned a lot. I've heard it all around. The last, no, I mean, right before WrestleMania 40 was when WWE hit another peak with The Rock, of all people, and the way he showed up and beat the living daylights out of Cody, in the rain against his boss. So, yeah, and
Yep.
God, that where do we see cliffhangers like that? And we'll talk about this probably in later videos, because when the invasion happens in if we ever get to that point, if you ever do like if you want to do a series on it, it's when WCW folded, the night
Right.
it folded, and then they invaded Monday Night Raw. And the one thing I've always remembered is how Kevin Nash took Rey Mysterio and flung him into the side of the truck like he was a lawn dart. It's
Yep.
like, yeah, I mean, but again, that's 25 years ago. Yeah, you don't see any kind of cliffhangers, or it's like you think the way like AEW had their championship match. We knew Max was winning last week, but why have it first? That should be the main event of the show, where you could see angles too. You don't. It's just, and I think that's another thing is placement of matches. The placement of matches is off, and where like AEW sometimes will have matches beginning instead of at the end, leaving them like when they have their longer episodes where they include Collision. They could
Yeah.
probably get people to stay for Collision if they put on a main event like a Darby Allin and whoever at the end of the show if it's a championship match, and have people come into Collision and watch it. And same with Raw and SmackDown. How many times do we see at the end of the show it's not a match? It's a pull apart brawl. It's a contract signing. It's just not. You should have something like a classic match and then the angle. It's just
Right.
I don't know, and I'm not sure where they've gone wrong, and who if they could get back to anybody who had watched creative back then, where they could bring somebody new in who has a fresh idea, to change things around. And it's just not. That's why sometimes when you get, luckily SmackDown's going to go back to 2 hours soon, but still, SmackDown still doesn't have the cachet it used to. That
That's
was the
true.
other thing. Now Netflix is Monday's the main show, when it used to be the other way around because Fox had SmackDown. I thought Fox did a good job with SmackDown. I really did. It was sad to see them go, but I think they saw writing on the wall too with things,
Mm-hmm.
and they said they didn't want to get caught losing money, and that's the whole point they got out of it, to be honest.
Well, thank you for that. And what I liked what you said was you brought up pull-apart brawls. So that's what's mind-boggling in my head. How 30 years ago, when we would see that, we were all. I remember going to the Eyes Out or the Garden for Raws and SmackDowns. When we would see pull-apart brawls, the arenas would explode. People would get excited. We just lost our brains. And even being at home watching it, I would lose my head. And now, like you said, they now end in pull-apart brawls, just like they did 30 years ago or 25 years ago. But for some reason, now it's just like, oh, again, we joke with the boss man, with Aaron Riff, that's his favorite, pull-apart brawls, contract signings. My question is, what do you think? I'll try to answer myself, but what has happened in these 30 years, in these 25 years, that they're doing what they did back then, but now it just seems like, again, it comes to a point where it's like, oh, not again. When back then, like I said, we were excited for it, we loved it, and now when we see it, it's like, oh, pull apart brawl again. Again, is it the people that they're using, or is it just, have they gone to the well one too many times? Like, what do you think could it be? Personally, I think it's that they just, either if it's Paul Levesque, that is, or somebody, break glass in case of emergency. All right, pull apart brawl. Like, are they going to it too much? Because like we said, back then in the chaos of building towards July, we saw what they then now were known as the Outsiders, just the two guys wreaking havoc, and it was cool. Was it because it was new to us? But again, and now when we see it today, does it feel like we were spoiled back then, or do they have the wrong, let's say, the wrong people doing it? It's just a mystery. Like Evolution, it's a mystery how in this time between then and now, they're kind of following the same script, but it just seems like it's not working today. Is it because we're spoiled?
I think it's a little of that, but I think they're doing it more and more of this now than they did back then. Mm-hmm. If you notice back then, it was you had certain things that happened once in a while where it wasn't, well, it's going to happen every week. At this point, you see them at least once a week and sometimes twice in a show at this point. I think they, like you said, they go to the well once too many times, and those end up with they being pushed away. But you know what? Back then, you had Stone Cold stunning people. That was hilarious.
True.
I mean,
that was great.
And I think that's one thing I miss about Kevin Owens. Kevin Owens, God bless him. I mean, the guy, he's the one guy I'm glad Stone Cold gave him the permission to do that move, because I think they really, believe it or not, I hope he comes back. I hope he's healthy. But I think WWE has really missed this guy. This guy was in the middle of a story when he got his neck hurt. I mean, he was in the middle of a great story. I mean, he's gold. He's gold on the mic. He's gold in the ring. He doesn't botch. This guy was the biggest professional. And I went back and saw on video the other day the first episode where he showed up and beat John Cena, and he was gold then on the mic. I mean, this guy guy said, "I'm not a rookie. I've been around longer than you have. I just been in the not here." Guys like that, Randy Orton being gone, Punk being gone now after he told Roman he's only part-time, and now who knows where he's at. It's just, but back then, like you said, with the Outsiders, it was a brand new thing. You didn't see anything like that. It was brand new, and that's another reason why they can't get that pop again. Just like what happened in July, that in '96, what we'll talk about, you'll never see anything like that again. They could have got close with Cena if they didn't. The beginning was great. They totally screwed that up. But what happened with the Outsiders and the nWo? Look what it did to Sting. We're seeing episodes, and this time in '96 of the last original Sting, because regular face paint. You never saw that ever again. It was only the black and white after the dark, like scary Sting, with the eagle, with the crow. I mean the crow. But I mean, these are the last episodes. It was just like the episode before Nash showed up that we kind of touched on in the last episode, of Sting going out there and challenging Hall. And this is the last. It's like, we never. I remember Sting from the time he started, and it's like to see how he all of a sudden went to the dark, and it was just after this where you didn't hear a word from him in a year.
Yeah,
for you only saw him.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
It's weird, and this is not the Johnny Gargano being quiet. this is nowhere near that, and
not even close.
Yeah, no, and it's like,
it's just mind-boggling. Where again, when. Yeah, I guess it was just a whole competition thing. Again, both two shows on the same night, us flipping back and forth. And as the train rolled along, again, we'll get into it more in part 3, but we can tease it here, where we're just seeing more of the Outsiders. They're doing the little with the cameras in the backstage thing. You mentioned Hall taking Nash taking Rey Mysterio, throwing him in a dart against that trailer. And back then, it felt like chaos was great, even in WWF as well, which I'll do a cheap plug. Hopefully next video will be another 30th anniversary that happened when Stone Cold Steve Austin finally brought us the Austin 316 promo. We saw a change. We were seeing a change in WWF, and we were seeing a change in WCW as well. And in today, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's perhaps the social media, or as I said in the past before in other videos, perhaps it's the influence of the guaranteed contracts. It's funny, we talk about wrestlers and their guaranteed contracts, and Hall and Nash had guaranteed contracts, so did Hogan. That changed the business as well. Nash brought it up when his feud with Punk in 2011. like, wrestlers today have guaranteed contracts because of me. Well, that is kind of true, because when they showed up to WCW, they got paid and all that. But now we're talking streaming services getting guaranteed contracts. The relationship with Saudi it's still 2 years more. They're in that deal. Will they get renewed? Quite possibly. We have Saudi Mania next year, but we also have Night of Champions in Saudi this year as well. So is it like that? Could that be the reason that we're not getting this must-see TV attitude where, again, not just me, you and everybody else have said it, where unfortunately, whether it be TKO, would it be Ariel or even The Rock, could it be too many chefs in the kitchen? Like, why? It's just amazing how one company did this so long ago because they had to survive. If you want to say, if we follow Vince's old story of they were putting me out of business. Okay, sure, whatever. Let's go with it. And so was it that the companies were literally, well, WCW wanted to change, Ted, we have the infamous story of Ted Turner telling Eric Bischoff, what do I need to do to compete with Vince? And he's like, give me 2 hours in prime time. And Ted said, all right, you got Monday. Okay, cool. That's the thing. Again, I don't think we'll ever find the answer that I'm looking for, or you are, or any of us are looking for, where I just hope that both companies, but I'm picking more on WWE because, again, they, like I said before, they won the war. It just seems like Dynamite, when I watch Dynamite, again, I always end going like, okay, I was entertained, sports entertained, if you will. Cool, moving on. With WWE, I've stopped watching. I watch Aaron's reviews, and when Aaron's like, when he says sometimes this is skippable, it's like, man, really? You have a 2.5 hour, close to 3 hour show, and then let's not even talk about SmackDown. But just on Raw, like, man, where were the days of we're talking right now where it was must see, even into the Attitude Era after the war, it still felt must see. So again, do you think it's corporate? Is it really social media, or is it the fact, like, again, they don't need to try, or again, maybe they don't have that focus like they did back then, where they were pushing Austin, they were pushing The Rock, like we saw them in '96, the beginning of the Stone Cold build, let's just say the debut of The Rock. I remember when The Rock debuted, which we'll probably talk about later in the year, in Survivor Series '96. JR was like, you got to keep an eye on this guy. He's a blue chipper. And I'm like, okay, I will. And then literally a year later, he's winning. 2 years later, he's the champion. So why can't that be Oba? Why can't that be Trick? Like, what do you, again, major props to Gino for mentioning it last time in his video that I'll shamelessly plug forever, because he was perfect on it. Mm-hmm. Do you think is there a fear to push these new guys that they can't do what they did 30 years ago or 25 years ago? Is there a fear that, like, will they get big heads, or is it like Braun Breaker? I said when he debuted and he joined when he turned on Seth, I said put the belt on him, but then he got injured. So what factors do you think are the pros and cons to, like, build these characters that we can have must-see TV from back in the day? What do you think?
I think it's a combination of everything you mentioned. I think maybe a little fear of what's going to happen, but I think it's a lot because they've got the money in their pockets. They don't really have to try as much.
Right.
It's not dog eat dog world at this point. They know they're number one by far. They know that no matter what, I think they're going to survive, whether people come or not.
Right.
At this point, unless everybody stops showing. I think also when you mentioned the preview to what you're going to talk about in a couple weeks is I think it was because of the Monday Night Wars that they did something drastic with Stone Cold, and because he wasn't really given the freedom before that. He was a good wrestler when he came out of WCW. They messed him up. They screwed him over. That's how he ended up eventually in WWE or WWF at the time. And he found the gimmick. And I think they had figured they had to try something to battle Bischoff, because at that point they were starting to make a run at him with the NWO. It's like, and he saw that they were making a move. And if he didn't make a move to counteract that they may overtake him, because Turner did have money. He could have you know, they could have gone way more than 83 weeks if they would have played it right.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if they would have played it right, they could destroy they could have started to take a chunk out of WWE. Period. At that
Right.
point, and I just said it's just TKO and these contracts and the Saudi mania, and I hope they don't screw up because Oba, we kind of compared him to the start of Brock, and just like they must be a little bit scared because Oba should have not been losing to Brock again. We talked about it in the predictions with Aaron on No DQ that he should have won and driven Brock crazy. That's where they would have had that money point because you see him getting nuts, and it's like it will led to, all right, it's my retirement or not. It's my retirement. I'll retire if you beat me a third time. You know, they're just not playing it right. They shouldn't be given. I know he's still new, but he's supposed to be the dominant monster. They should have been. He should have not been losing yet. There's no reason for him to lose at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm worried because, I saw it on Aaron's review after Raw on Monday, that the way Oba called out Brock, and there's no real reason for Brock to interfere. He's gonna screw. They're screwing this King of the Ring up. I'm telling you, they're screwing both of them up, the Queen and the King, because I see now Oba's going to get screwed over by Brock, even though it doesn't make any sense. It would have made sense if he would have beat Brock, but now they're making it personal. And Aaron said, "I have a fear he's calling Brock a bitch." So obviously, there's going to be an answer to that, and I'm afraid they're going to screw up Oba. Oba should have been winning the title at SummerSlam. If they wanted to build him like Brock. And I know Gino mentioned that Brock left after he became champion, but I don't think Oba's like that. It's a little different nowadays. We're not going to see Oba go to another organization or anything. He's staying. They're making a big mistake if they don't put the belt on him now, because eventually this is not how they're going to build more people, because Cody and Reigns are getting older. They're in their early 40s. They're probably on their last contracts at one point or another, because Roman's going to go to acting full time. We know it. Just like Cena did eventually. It's going to happen, and they got to build him and Trick now, and not stick him with losses and with gimmicks like the gingerbread man and all that crap. That may have worked in the Attitude Era but because Stone Cold would have just not played with it, he would just beat the hell out of everybody instead. And
he did give a stunner to Santa, so there you go. You're right.
I mean, that would have been funny. I mean, because Sammy beating the heck out of a stuffed gingerbread man. I mean, I just wanted to. Sometimes it made me want to scratch my eyes out looking at that stuff. And it's like, the comedy is fine at times, but not in the situations where you're trying to build a young guy. The Trick's been nothing but over since he walked on the main stage, and you're just screwing it, and then they're gonna screw him up too. Hopefully, hopefully they don't, but I'm really concerned if they don't build these guys up and they don't do it right, that in a few years, if AEW does get creative where they should, and if they could put on shows where you have cliffhangers, I'm telling you, they're going to steal people away from WWE, because at this one point or another, they'll steal some, but it's like, it'll be like 2019, 2020. I enjoyed AEW way more than WWE back then. Way more. I watched from episode 1 of Dynamite. And I remember when Dynamite was good, they brought Rampage on. Rampage was good. But then they added Collision. They started to add too much too quickly. They were spreading themselves too thin, and then trying to sign every WWE guy. And the thing is, not every one of them was going to be their style. And you see what happened with Rusev. You see, and then they've blown late, like Wardlow. Wardlow should have been a star. They had a chance to make him a star, and they didn't because, unfortunately, and the one thing I didn't like is Tony doesn't like the big guys really. If you notice, he doesn't push them really well, and that's why Hobbs left. And that's why you see, I'm worried about like guys like Lashley. I know it's the end of his career, but still, they're wasting him because he came in there with MVP and Shelton Benjamin like a house of fire, and now you hardly see him. And it's like, it's because he's got too many toys, like they say, to play with. I just don't. I think there's too many wrestlers on both promotions, too many shows, but they're not featuring everybody. They're only featuring their favorites.
Yeah,
and
but hopefully, on that note, hopefully it doesn't get out of control like the NWO. But again, like we mentioned before, seems like with this new bloodline, I'm seeing the NWO in the bloodline where here we go again. And like I said, this new reincarnation that started a couple weeks ago, or actually after Clash in Paris, it feels like to compare it to the NWO, it feels like this is the NWO after the finger poke of doom, where
there's another thing.
Now,
there's another thing they could.
Yeah,
there's another thing they could have done with that. If they would have, they may have a twist with Fatu in here. But the thing is, if they really wanted to do something to make the bloodline evolve, you would have had Fatu beat Reigns.
Oh, of course.
Because then you would have had at least evolution. Because not literally the group, but I mean, they would have evolved the bloodline. Now you're seeing like it's. The episode of Raw, LA Knight saying you guys, or Seth Rollins was saying you guys are the carriers for Roman again. And look at Jim, you're not anywhere. You don't get any chances. It's just repeat, or it's rinse and repeat with it. And it's like, that is not how it should be. If you're going to have a stable continue, that's why Judgment Day needs to end too. If you're going to have a stable continue, you got to evolve, and they're just not evolving it. And like you said, if they join they have the MFTs join them, which it looks that way, it's going to be an NWO again, another type of the recreation, which never worked after the first incarnation of it.
Yeah, we'll get to that point on part 3 of this with hopefully more people, but we'll get into the downfall of it. But yeah, where it just seems like trying to compare it to 30 years ago and even 20, and even in the Attitude Era of the excitement of new stars coming in, I just feel like we're getting that in WWE. And like I said, I've seen in AEW, and you mentioned it too, the Kyle Fletchers in the rooms and all that. We're seeing more of the new guys or the young stars being built up. Again, they're not thrown in the main event picture, but they're hovering around it. We're seeing it more in AEW than WWE. And just comparing it to 30 years ago, this was something new, seeing two guys who made their names in WWF are now making their name in WCW. But again, I think it was like what you mentioned before and what we said. It was fresh. It was new. And hopefully wrestling can continue to, like you said, evolve, get better. But what I really would like wrestling to do, with both companies, is go back to how it was, where it was must-see TV. Again, if people read spoilers, that's on you. I mean, even like right now, the WWE's in Europe, and if you can't watch it live or you watch it later, it's on you if you see the spoilers or not. I do the same thing with movies. If there's a diehard movie that I want to see, I'll do my absolute best to avoid spoilers. But if I read them, so what? All right, cat's out of the bag, and I'll still try to hold my excitement for it. So yeah, like we were saying, maybe it's because of that, the influence of social media in it, where 30 years ago there was no social media. The internet was barely a baby in 96. I think AOL popped up in 95 or 94 or something like that. So we didn't have the technology that we had today. So I just hope, again, to compare it to 30 years ago, that wrestling can return to hopefully that must-see TV, that you got to watch it live. Don't watch it on tape delay or the next day or YouTube clips or anything like that. You get so intense with the storyline. You get so intense with the action that it's Monday night, you're running home to watch it. Or I would at least probably DVR it, the max there. And same for Wednesday and same for Friday, where you got to watch it either live or if you DVR it, watch it immediately with the first second chance you can watch it. Because again, back in my day, when I would go to the Raws and SmackDowns, I would be taping Nitro just in case, just to be like, all right, what's going on in the other show? Because again, I didn't use the internet that much, or I didn't know about websites that told you this type of stuff. So I would record a Nitro here and there just to be like, oh, what happened? Because I would be at the arena. What is going on the other show? So it's mind-boggling, but hopefully for the future, especially for these new stars, they can build these stars like they did with the nWo, like they did to counter the nWo. All these names that rose from the ashes or of the new guys of the Bill Goldbergs and the Luchadors and all that. We're building up for this competition. Sadly, that's what's missing, direct competition, but AEW is still around. And like you said, I hope they focus on themselves. So much so that, like you said, they start picking away WWE's audience, where WWE gets their butts lit just like they did 30 years ago, where, oh man, what's going on over here? We got to counter that. And hopefully we get back to that time where both companies are thriving. Sure, let them take their shots at each other. That doesn't really bother me that much, but the storylines get better. There are new characters. The characters are engaging, and we have this product where both companies are thriving, where hopefully we get that fire that we had 30 years ago, but only time can tell when it comes to that. So on that note, so a quick preview. So again, shout out to my boy, Dave Scheffler, but before he gives his plug. So little future plugs here. So speaking of another 30-year event, like I said, next week, we're going to gab about the 30th anniversary of SummerSlam 1996, where Stone Cold Steve Austin uttered his phrase for the first time, Austin 316. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about the impact of it. And we'll talk about a reality that people tend to forget. People think after the SummerSlam promo, people have this misconception. I feel today, 30 years later, people thought that was the beginning of Austin's rise. Actually, it wasn't. So we'll gab about that later. And then, of course, we're trekking towards July of 1996, when the unthinkable happened. And then that was it. That was a sword in the stone of the nWo's presence on American soil. But not only that, but on the Monday Night Wars. And for that episode, we'll talk about the highs of the nWo, and we'll talk about the many lows of the nWo, of what we feel like. And overall, I'll ask whoever's on that panel that night the ultimate question: what was the nWo's legacy? But before that, Dave, I want to thank you so much for being on. Tell the folks out there where they can find you and where we can see you.
Thank you again for having me. I appreciate it and enjoyed talking with you anytime. You'll see me on Facebook. You see me on No DQ, whether it be the reviews or predictions with you. And you'll see me, of course, on Major Push Wrestling, when we get to meet every Wednesday night and have a great discussion of the week with our buddy Papagino. And that's about it. And I appreciate you having me again.
Yeah, no problem. Again, thanks so much for being on. And yeah, like Dave said, I appear sometimes on Papagino's Major Push Wrestling. Again, shout out to the boss, Aaron Rift. Also, a mega to keep cheap plugging No DQ. Thank you to Aaron for letting this video, and I think others, start appearing on his personal channel, where all of us who will have shows on YouTube are now going to be on No DQ. So check out nodq.com for your latest news and rumors. Check out Aaron Riff's his reviews of the shows on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Like Dave said, we're on predictions for WWF and WWE, and especially check out Aaron's reviews of the pay-per-views as well. He's doing the dirty work for us. Like I said, I don't watch Raw and SmackDown. Aaron does. God bless you on that, Aaron. He watches it. He does great reviews. And again, 1,000 thanks to Aaron for the great community of No DQ. That's how me and Dave got to know each other. That's how Gina and I started our little quote-unquote business venture together on these videos. But so a major shout out to Aaron Rift of No DQ. This will be appearing somewhere on nodq.com on his YouTube channel as well. So till then, thank you so much for everybody for checking out this video. If you like what you saw, please hit that like button, subscribe, so you get notifications when the video pops up. And as always, take care. God bless you and everybody around you. And of course, when you're nWo, you're nWo for
life.
Good night, everybody.
The preceding announcement has been paid for by the New World Order.